purpose of this video is to give you a better understanding of what is expected on this new TTESS observation rubric. We are all in a path of learning and growing with this new observation system, and so I wanted to give a few tips that will help you to get those proficient or higher scores whenever you plan and execute your lessons. So to get started, we're going to look at the foundation, which is our TTESS rubric. One little piece of advice for when you're planning your lesson and executing your lesson is you have to have an objective. It has to be communicated to your students, and you need to check for mastery of that objective by the end of class. Without this, it's going to be very difficult to get that proficient rating or anything beyond that. So from our rubric, we have all goals aligned to the state standards. So for us, that's our TEKS. We have objectives being aligned to the lesson's goal. So if your lesson's goal is that your kids know the arguments for and against ratification of the Constitution, then your objective should be aligned to that, where you are having students summarize those arguments. Setting expectations that challenge all students. You are setting your academic expectation through your objective and then aligning your activities to that objective. Another part of the rubric that you will see referred to this is persist with the lesson until there is evidence that most students demonstrate mastery of the objective. The kids need to know where you are going with the lesson, and they need to see, and you need to see, did they get it? If they didn't get it, then you know you need to monitor and adjust maybe the next day, maybe you need to address it at the end of class, but you've got to check and see, did the kids get it by the end of the lesson? Another area I've given a lot of advice on is this area of lesson closure. This is often difficult for many teachers. Many teachers are used to just teaching all the way up to the bell and then yelling out what the assignment is for homework or what they're trying to wrap up in the last sentence as the kids are trying to walk out the door. You need to figure out either within your lesson plan or whenever you are executing that lesson, is to make sure you have that time at the end of class for lesson closure. So in the lesson closure, you need to review the objective and you need to check for mastery. If you have the time, one other thing that might be worthwhile with your lesson closure is giving the kids a chance for reflection. So these are all big components that need to be in that lesson closure. You really want to avoid that going all the way up to the bell without any closure at the end. So let's get to actually writing your objective. One of the things you want to do is you want to think to yourself as you're writing it, what do I want my kids to learn as a result of this lesson? What do I want them to get out of it? You want to make sure it's aligned to your TEKS. If you write a lesson plan and you have 6 or 7 student expectations on your lesson plan, are they going to meet all of those student expectations in that one 50-minute lesson or 90-minute lesson? You need to go back and reflect and see which of those standards will they be mastering or in the process of mastering by the end of that lesson, and cater your objective to that. So think about that when you're writing down your standards that will be covered during that lesson. What's going to be the main one or main 2 that the kids are going to master by the end of that lesson? Another important piece with writing your objective is it measurable? If you say the students will understand something within their objective, how do you measure that they understand? How do you measure that they know? Think about those verbs, align it to the verbs in the TEKS. You know, the students will be able to summarize, they will be able to explain, they will be able to compare and contrast, they'll be able to evaluate, justify their answer, things like that. You want it to be something measurable where if they demonstrated mastery, you can look at it and go, yep, they know how to evaluate this topic, or yep, they know how to explain it. So 3 steps to having this high quality objective. First, you want to come up with your STEM. I always have one in my class that I used every day, and this was, I will be able to. I wanted the students to take ownership in what they were going to be doing. So I had my STEM I used every day, some examples. After completing the lesson, the student will be able to, or you can just start with the student will be able to. The other thing you want to do is add a verb to your STEM. This is where you have your measurable verb. And then after you have your STEM and your verb, what's going to be the outcome? And this is where you have a lot of your content. Another piece of advice is you've got to make your objective with kid-friendly language. If you put anything that's too above their head, then it's going to be hard for them to explain what they're doing. If a person comes in observing your class and they ask the kids what they're doing and they don't understand what the objective is because it's written in too high of language, then the objective won't mean anything to the kids. So make sure you put it in kid-friendly language. Some example objectives. Also in your ARC, under your instructional outcomes, instructional goals, you do have some that you can use. You do have some statements you can use as an objective. So one example for maybe sixth grade math, students will be able to solve real world problems using equivalent ratios, including percent problems. So one thing you might want to do after communicating this to your kids is there might be some terms that you might have to go over with them to make sure they understand it, but you want it in the objective because that is essential vocabulary for them to know. So if there is essential vocabulary that they need to master that needs to be in the objective, that's good. That's fine with the whole kid-friendly language advice, but make sure that the kids can explain or they can define those terms. Other objective examples for science, the learner will describe producer-consumer relationships as they occur in food webs within marine, freshwater, and terrestrial ecosystems. This originally comes from a standard that has multiple types of relationships, but you may not get to those all in one class period, so you might want to pull what's the one from that standard you're going to do for the day. An example from 7th grade language arts, by the end of class, I will be able to summarize the main ideas and supporting details in text. So you want to be able to give them something that they can look at and they know what I'm doing in class today and what I should know by the end of the period. So some tips for when you get to actually conduct your lesson. Display your objective. My advice, put it on a whiteboard, put it on a piece of chart paper, put it somewhere where it is visible during the whole lesson. If you put it on your projector screen and then you change your projector slides, then the kids aren't going to be able to refer to it. You won't be able to refer to it. The other big thing is communicate that objective at the beginning of class. Before you start your main lesson for the day, make sure that the kids know what the objective is and that they understand the objective and they can define vocabulary that's within the objective. And then another piece of advice is refer to your objective throughout the lesson, maybe at a midpoint. Do a check at the midpoint. Okay, guys, we are going over our objective. Our objective is to summarize main ideas in a piece of text. On a scale of 1 to 5, how do you feel about mastering this objective? How do you feel about reaching this objective? And do a pulse check during the middle of class. This will also help with keeping you aligned to that objective and that you'll stay on that path. And then finally, your objective has to have a way to check for mastery of it. So again, like I said at the beginning, make sure you pace your lesson to allow for closure. If this is the last 5 minutes to 7 minutes of class, for them to write an exit slip or to explain to a partner or to share out as a whole class, you want to make sure you allow for that at the end of class. Now, let's say your lesson's going a little longer than you expected and you don't feel like you're going to get all the way to the end of your objective by the end of class. Find yourself a stopping point and measure where they are at that point. There's nothing wrong with taking longer on a topic than you felt like was originally necessary, as long as you find a spot to have that stopping point and then, okay, let's check and see where you are at this point. Are you able to summarize that text? Are you able to figure out that producer-consumer relationship and see where they are so that at least you know at the end of class, my kids gained something and they learned something today. Even if it was the entire objective, they did learn something. I hope that this gave you a good overview and advice for writing your objective and for using that objective in your lesson. Within the comments for the YouTube video, I will have 2 handouts, one on how to write an objective and a one-pager with a lot of ideas on how to check for mastery at the end of a lesson. Thanks for listening.